In this video, I'm going to cover a brilliant experiment which reveals physics beyond the standard model. It was conceptualized by Avshalom Elitzur and Eliahu Cohen and carried out by associate researchers in Japan. I became aware of it in a video interview with Avshalom on Curt Jaimungals' channel Theories of Everything. I'll link that video and the scientific paper of the experiment in the description below. Now, what the physicist Avshalom is claiming in the video is that it reveals what he says can only be explained by a particle coming from a false past and the detection of a pull, which he says can only be explained by the idea of negative mass. He says this reveals new physics beyond the particle model, and indeed it does, but not in the way he describes. It further verifies my model of the 999 space-time lattice, the space-time fabric, which is a network of elastic tubes filled with an ether which fills all of space, allowing waves to move inside it. 999 because at the quantum level it has 3 layers of 9 nodes connected to a quantum block at the Planck limit. This is the block that reveals quantum gravity, and each of those nodes and connections have a radius of h bar when fully dilated, with a wave passing through. First, I'll cover Avshalom's explanation, which he says is the only explanation that anyone can come up with. However, that is only when using the particle model paradigm. The evidence for his interpretation is very clear, and it is convincingly interpreted with the idea that strange, fantastical, mysterious physics must be at play, because otherwise it seems to make no sense. I mean, how can one explain a false past using common sense or a way to cross-check that? We can't. Also, he proposed the idea of negative mass, which in reality is another construct to explain what particle physicists cannot explain. And bear in mind, the particle physicists can't explain clearly and simply what mass is. It turns out to be more confusion and incorrect understanding of the data which arises when it is applied to the particle model. So first we'll look at the diagram of the experiment setup, then I'll explain Avshalom's interpretation, and then I'll explain my interpretation using wave mechanics. So this is the schematic of the experiment. We have single photons fired from a location at the very bottom of the diagram. These hit a beam splitter, which is BS1. 2/3 of those travel straight forward to BS2 and being bounced off mirrors B or A, B to the left, A to the right, and passed by a third beam splitter, BS3, to be detected at D1, detector 1. The other 1/3 of the photons fired will be detected at either D2 or D3. So what Avshalom is saying is that when we mathematically run the experiment backwards, that some of the particles arriving at D2 must be coming from false paths. He says this is verified by the experimenters, who in fact used very sensitive instrumentation on mirrors at A and B. And when there was particles detected at D2, there was also a slight push detected at mirror A and a slight pull at mirror B. And he says what explains this is when you run the mathematics that you end up with negative mass at mirror B. And he compares this idea of negative mass as being equal to Paul Dirac's prediction of the positron, which was initially thought by doubters to be just mathematics, but which was experimentally verified. However, this can all be explained very easily using wave mechanics with no need for strange, mysterious false paths or negative mass. And I will explain soon in this video why negative mass makes no sense. Bear in mind, the particle physicists cannot even explain what mass is. So here's what it means using wave mechanics. When a photon wave is sent out from the source, then where it is in phase, when released, will dictate where it will be detected. Not a particle, but a wave crest. The crystalline structure of the beam splitter will have properties which one can compare to being like a double slit experiment setup. So what evolution of the wave, the photon, is in will dictate where it will go. A wave fully in phase passing left or right in phase will go and be detected fully in phase at D1. If the wave passes the beam splitter in the ratio of left to right, 2/3 to 1/3, in phase respectively, it will be detected fully merged again at D3, while the wave passing left-right, 1/3 and 2/3 will be fully merged again at D2. To understand this, it is helpful to understand the structure of the space-time fabric 999 lattice, which explains quantum gravity, which I explain in multiple videos on my channel and in my theory of everything. And it's very simple to understand quantum gravity when you understand that quantum gravity is the compaction of the fabric leading to the surrounding fabric being stretched, leading to circular paths of least resistance, on which I mentioned at the start of the video. And each of the tubes has h bar as its radius, so the speed of light is constant in both electromagnetic radiation and gravitational waves, because the waves are quantized to move through the tubes and cannot be added to speed up with greater momentum. At greater momentum, the wave simply becomes larger. With gravitational waves, or with electromagnetic waves of high energy, they oscillate much faster. So in this experiment, the wave will be oscillating left, right, up, down, back and forth as it makes its way along the particle gun. Now, which phase it is in will be determined by the Schrödinger equation applied to the wave emerging from the barrel of the particle gun. The probability distribution has the wave emerging from the barrel with an equal distribution at the flat cross section of the opening, but this becomes curved as the wave then evolves and propagates out as a spherical wave. And the probability of where that wave will be detected fully in wave at a crest is determined by the Schrödinger equation. So the wave crest may be to the left or right or up or down when emerging. So 1/3 will pass fully in phase to the left at the beam splitter, 1/3 fully in phase to the right. The other 1/3 will have them in 1/3 in phase approximately at the left, 2/3 in phase at the right, to then be merged and detected at D2, and 2/3 in phase left, 1/3 in phase at the right, then fully merged and detected at D3. The reason there was slight but definite momentum detected as a push at the mirror B and a pull at mirror A is because the pull in the mirror B was in fact a push as the wave bounced off the mirror to the far left on the path of BS1 and C. And then the wave detected passing through the interferometer 2/3 in phase will merge again with the 1/3 at the beam splitter at BS4 and be fully in phase as it reaches D2. So as we can see, when we think in terms of wave mechanics, we can take all of what seems super complicated and fantastically super weird out of the mechanics in the particle model and replace it with simple wave mechanics. As for negative mass, it makes no sense. Negative mass is a measure of the compaction of the space-time fabric into clumps. The stretch in the surrounding fabric forms what we know as gravity and explains the mechanics of how the detection of time dilates in atomic clocks. As the fabric is compacted more, the surrounding fabric is stretched near large gravitational planets and stars. Then electron shells are stretched. So this means they need more energy to saturate the shell and emit a photon, therefore causing the detection of time to slow down. The detection of time, not time itself. And negative mass makes no sense. You can't have negative compaction. And that's easy to understand. If you have a sponge and you squeeze it, you're going to compact it, equivalent to what we call mass. But if you take your fingers off it and relax it, it's going to go back to its original shape. It's not going to grow any larger than its original form. That's what mass is, compaction. And that's why negative mass makes no sense. And like light, you can either have light or not have light, but you can't have negative light. You can have positive or negative images, but the negative image is where there is no light. It's not having negative light. And for more common sense explanation of the standard model in the wave and vortex paradigm, there are other videos on my YouTube channel, Breaking Physics Beyond the Standard Model, and odyssey.com, Science Not Dogma, where my theory of everything is linked. I'll also link it down below. And just to be clear, the standard model is a fantastic model. All physicists need to do is to view them as wave crests passing through the fabric detected as photons, as creases rippling through the fabric detected as neutrinos, and vortexes detected as electrons and positrons, in various shapes and states of attachment, which are the building blocks which make up all other fermions, mesons and bosons. And best of all, it is testable with multiple new experiments, the simplest of which can be carried out in any lab which is equipped and able to fire single photons and or electrons in a vacuum. The simplest of which is this one, firing single photons at detectors placed not in front of the single photon gun, but to the side. Detectors which are positioned so they could only detect a photon if it were a wave, not a particle. And I have also proven, with a statistical inequality found in the double-slit experiment, that the wave function never collapses. When it is not detected in space, it is detected in time, and vice versa. Up until I noticed it, everybody was focused on purely the physical wave function and never thought to think about looking for it in the timing. When I suggested in 2019 that we analyse activity on the front screen to solve this experiment, I was told by various different people that activity on the front screen is completely irrelevant, that I didn't understand what I was talking about, etc. But 6 months later, I found experimental evidence that proves I was right. But it proves the particle model wrong, and 5 years later, still nobody is acknowledging it. Plus, for anybody craving some mathematics, I have successfully proven 2 long-standing conjectures in mathematics, which are so clear that it looks like people can't believe that they can be correct, or someone else would have figured them out, or they would have been peer-reviewed, so people are not fully checking them. So please, go and check them. You'll find they are, in fact, absolute. They are absolutely indisputable. It just took thinking outside the box to look at them in a completely unintuitive way to solve them, applying simple but subtle twists of logic. And they're not peer-reviewed or even an arxiv, because being homeless with no contacts in academia, peer review, or even getting them up on arxiv is proving impossible. So if anyone takes the time to check them properly, they will see they are indeed correct. So please share them with everyone, and let's get physics back on track with the real new physics beyond the standard model. And at least there's so much more which we currently believe is impossible using the particle model. So please check out the other videos on my channels. A lot of them are in just 1 minute shorts, including those 2 proofs which have been condensed into 1 minute shorts, and the full long versions, with lots of very simple, very clear experiments to test these theories. Thanks for watching, and I've just noticed that as I finish this last part of the video, it's gone 21 minutes past midnight on the 25th of December 2024, so it's Christmas Day. So happy Christmas everyone. I hope this is part of your Christmas and you enjoy it and you share it with everybody else. And whether you believe in God or not, I'm 100% sure that God was very much a guide in me doing all my work, so thank you God. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.